So in this lesson, we're going to continue implementing the product screen, and we'll pick up right where we left off, which is here. So we ended up with this screen, and if I run the app right now, what you will see is nothing. Why? Because we didn't specify how to use this screen. We just defined the screen. But if you remember, in the main activity, we removed the previous screen. And this is the time to now use the product screen. Option enter and import. And now if I run it again, we should see something. Yes, but with a very questionable color, because we didn't specify the background color. So this box doesn't have any color. How to do that? You guessed it, we're going to use another modifier called background. And we give a color to this background modifier. So I have a color code with me, which is this very dark color. Let's see. Yes, this looks like a bit more like the design. So let's implement this image. So there is a composable called image, like this. But the thing with this composable is it doesn't load image from the internet. So only if you have assets bundled with your app, for example, logos or any other image. But the composable that we want is not out of the box in the Compose framework. So for that, we're going to use a library. We're going to add a dependency. So making an image loader mechanism is quite difficult. It's a whole other story. How to download images, how to cache them, how to display them. So that's why we're not going to reinvent the wheel, and we're going to use a library called coil. And version catalog is where all our library definitions are centralized. So these are all the libraries that the template came with, but now we're going to add something called coil. So I'll add the version first. I know that the library version is this. And here is where the definitions are. So you can see, for example, compose. It has a group name, it has a library name, and it has a version. And this goes for all the other dependencies. So I'm going to copy the last one and rename it to coil. I know that the group is called IO coil KT and the name is coil compose. And we're going to refer the version just like this. So now this new library is added, but how to use it? So for that, we're going to the Gradle script, this one. So this is where all those libraries are used. I'm going to copy this one and add coil. Whenever we touch Gradle scripts and the dependencies, we need to sync the project one time with Gradle. So now it's synced and I can use the coil component here. So it's called async image because it's going to asynchronously load the image from the internet. And I'm going to add it just above the title. And the way I can specify the URL, the image URL is like this. Model, and then you can give it the URL. It's very specific to this library. And I know one image URL, which is this. And as you see, it's still complaining about something. Because it needs one more argument. So content description is a mandatory argument. This is for accessibility reasons. So when someone can't see the app, they can still use tools to describe the content. So it would say here, what is the image, for example. But right now, for simplicity, I'm just going to leave it at image. The thing is, because it's an image coming from the internet, we cannot see it in the preview. But we can see it in the app when we run it. So let's run the app. But you can see that the app crashes. So if I go to Logcat, I can see what's going wrong. And here we have some nice red error, and it says permission is missing. So for the first time, our app is using internet. That needs a permission. And where do we declare the permissions? Manifest. Android manifest, which is here. So here we need to define the new permission. And to declare a new permission, we can use this tag, uses permission. And there are so many permissions, but the one that I want is called internet. This is it. And now if I run the app one more time, let's see what else can go wrong. Yes, we get the image. So this is the image coming from the server. Nice. There is something else that is bothering me. If you look at the product screen, you can see we have not per se a very clean code. Can you notice? Yes, you guessed it right. We are using a lot of repetition. For example, the font size, the paddings, as you see, like so many 16 paddings, and also these colors, they don't mean anything when you're looking at the color code. So this is where something very handy comes in the game. That is called theme. So if you remember, we skipped talking about this Android 101 theme. So what is a theme? Theme helps us manage color palettes and font styles. This theme is automatically generated by the template. So you can see it has some color palette already, and it has some typography. This is where the font style comes. And there is one font style defined, the rest that are just commented out. So we want to make our font styles reusable and put them here, and also make the colors reusable so that we don't have to use the same color codes every time for other composables. So where are these colors listed? If I press comment and click, you can see they are all listed here. And their location is here under the theme. So these are the default colors, but I want to add some new ones. Well, my designer gave me the color palette and it looks like this. So that orange that we already used, this green, and this is the dark background, but there are also more colors. And I'm not going to use these ones. Just going to replace the whole thing and then use them in the theme. So what are these primary, secondary, and tertiary? These are the three main colors of your app. So for example, for my app, orange will be the main color, the primary color. And then the secondary is that green, this one. And the tertiary, I just put yellow, but is not that much used. But there are also other colors that I want to use. For example, background, that's this dark blue. And on background, so this is the color of the content that will be shown on the background. So for example, this text is on the background and that was white. So by default, anything that goes on a background will have white color, and by default all the backgrounds will be dark blue. And notice that we have two color schemes. There is one dark and there is one light. This is to support dark mode on the apps. So when the user switches the setting of their phone to dark, or if it's automatic at night, it will automatically switch to dark. That's when it will use these colors. But if the phone is in light mode, then it will use these colors. And For now, I would say just for simplicity, repeat the same colors. But because I already have the light scheme colors, I'm going to just paste them here. They are very slightly different. Main one being this background. And the cool thing of this automatically generated theme is that it takes care of those switching between like light and dark mode automatically. So you can see those two color schemes are used here, and it detects, does it need to use dark theme or the light theme? So you don't need to even worry about that part. It's already generated and taken care of. But how can I now use these colors? So if I go to my product screen, I could just replace, for example, this one with orange. And I could replace this one with blue dark. Let's run it at one time and see how it looks like. So you see, it's now using the same color, but of course the visual is the same. We won't see the difference. But if you want to take one step forward and support dark mode and light mode, this will not work because this will stay all the time dark. And to access these colors that we have here, primary, secondary, background, we can use material theme. You can sit here and then color scheme. So this will pick the active color scheme. So if it's dark, it will pick the colors from the dark color scheme, and if it's light, from the light one. And for example, if I select background, now let's run the app and see. It picks the other one because I specified in the theme that the light color scheme background is light blue. And so our screen is a bit messed up if the dark mode is off. So I'm going to just replace those colors one by one. So I copy this one. This is color scheme, and this title, I wanted to use the primary color. So the primary is, well, orange and a darker version of orange. I want to see the changes as I'm changing them, so I don't want to rebuild the app every time. Let's switch back to the preview, but it's a bit messed up right now because in our preview, we are not using the theme. So the theme, Android 101 theme, needs to be used also in the preview. But that even didn't solve it because there is something wrong in my layout. You don't see it when the app is built, but the preview shows it. There is a problem here if you notice. Something is taking over the layout. This async image. So by default, it's just taking over the whole screen. But when the image is loaded, then it understands the size of that image. But I want to make it occupy only a certain part of the screen. So I'm going to give it a specific height to not be higher than 300 dp, and also fill the width. I do want it to take the whole width of the screen. So now we can see the rest of the stuff. And now I can continue changing these colors. So I'm going to copy this one. And the color of the description is on background. And let's do replace more colors. So for example, this price is secondary. Let me see. I just noticed actually the title and the price, they have their colors coming from somewhere else. So this is not the color that is in my color scheme. And that's because, well, part of this generated code is annoying, which I'm going to get rid of, which is this dynamic color. Dynamic color got introduced in Android 12, which takes the color from the system. So from the background of your wallpaper. But that's not what I want in my app. I want my own branding, so I'm going to remove this one. Yes. Now the preview should work. Whenever there's render issue, you can see this warning here. So I refresh it. And now we can see the colors from our light scheme palette. This little text also doesn't have its own color. It's also going to be the same as on background. So this preview is showing the light mode, but I want another preview also for the dark mode. So I'm going to copy this one and call this one light mode preview, and then dark mode preview. But how to actually tell the preview that we want it to be dark mode? Using this argument called UI mode. Now we can see this one is in dark mode and this one is in light mode. Perfect. And if you want to know more about these material colors, there is this nice website, this article. I'm going to share the link in the description. Now let's get to the fonts. So I want to have some reusable text style. So we can just reuse them here instead of defining the font size and the font weight every time. For that, we have this typography. Using it is like this. For this, let's say, description, I would replace this text style with material theme dot typography and body large. And then you see it looks like this. And for example, let's try to do the same for the title. I'm going to replace it. And the title looks like this also. So I need to replace these text styles with my own. This is again something that you would get from your designer. So what is the font size? What is the font weight? And which typography do you need for your app? Usually it's something that comes from the designer. But if you want some very basic and default list of text styles, you can get it from this page of Android developers, typography, and you can see a list of styles that they have the font size and the line height. Very simple. But I'm going to replace these. For example, you can see headline. It has 3 different sizes. So these are basically titles. Headline large, medium, and small. And also body large, medium, small. Each of them have their own font size, line height, and letter spacing, and also the font weight. So these titles, of course, are bold, and these bodies are just normal. You can also just copy paste this from this project. I'm going to share the code anyways. And now I'm going to use them in the screen. In the design, we have the style as headline small. Body large for the description is fine. For the price, I'm going to copy paste, delete the old one. So this 28, let's see who has 28. Headline medium. Headline medium, and let's do this. Nice. If you see the preview doesn't really look updated, you can run the app one time. It will rebuild and show the latest code. One more. 18. Which one is 18? Body large. So this is going to be body large. And that's it for the text styles. But as you see, we do still have some repetitive code, all these paddings, for example. So paddings or spacings, they are not directly used in the theme itself, but they are part of design systems. And in Android apps, they are defined as dimensions. So there is usually a file called dimensions or daemons that has all these paddings and spacings. So I'm going to create a new one here and called daemons. But I don't want the class, so I'm going to delete it. I just want a set of values here, just like what we had for the colors. So for example, if I say val spacing equals 16 dp. Now this is what I can use for everything that is 16 here. But you can see we have also more spacings. So a list of spacings would be handy here. Usually what they define in the design systems is a list of spacings that looks like this. I just copy pasted again. This is usually the typical list. And as you see, these numbers are multiples of 4. So they are not like 5, 10, and 15, but they are multiples of 4. And the reason of it is really in the territory of design, is for alignment and visual scalability. And so now if we replace all these 16s by spacing M, then we have more meaningful names here instead of 16. So now I want to replace all of these 16 DPs with spacing M. There is a really cool shortcut, Command R or Control R in Windows. And you can get this replace tool. So I say replace every 16 DP with spacing M. You can replace them all like this. The 32 DP needs to be spacing XL. Again, Command R, replace with spacing XL and replace all. And I need to import it. This looks better now. So if I run the app, let's see how it looks like. Let's set the device into dark mode because I like dark mode. And now you see that it's almost like the design. However, this top part of the app is missing, and you see that the image is squeezed into the status bar of the phone. And also at the bottom, the same thing. So it's going under the navigation bar. So that in Android apps is called edge to edge. So some apps do want that behavior. They want to take the full screen, but in this design and in our app, we don't want the app to be edge to edge. And for that, we need something called scaffold, another composable. Scaffold calculates the paddings at the top and the bottom of the screen, and then it lets you know the padding. So I'm going to wrap the whole screen into this scaffold. And this is how we can get the padding. Inner padding. So this is provided by the scaffold, and we can pass it on as a padding to this box. And now if we run it, you can see the status bar padding is calculated and also the navigation bar. Nice. Still missing this thing here. So this is called top bar, or also sometimes app bar. How to add a top bar to the app? Again, using the scaffold. So this is when we need to pass it some parameters. Top bar. You can pass any composable to this top bar. It basically needs a function that returns a composable. So you could actually just say text and then title, for example. And then you see this is now the top bar. But Compose does provide a component for this, which is called top app bar. So this composable makes it easier to make a top bar. So it has the typical size of a top bar, and it also has the correct paddings and alignment and everything. So you don't need to do it from scratch, but we do need to give it some parameters. So one of them is title, which is again another composable. So this is not just a string. We do need to give it a composable. And for that, I give it text. And you can see it's complaining that this is an experimental API. So I do need to suppress this warning, which if you press Option Enter, you can just say I opt in for this experimental API. And now let's just check it out. It looks like this. And I want this text to have a style. So I do the same thing that we did with the other texts. We can also see it in the preview. So this is so far how it looks like, but I do want to give the whole top bar also a color. So for that, top app bar has this argument colors, and this is how we can generate a color palette for the top app bar. Top app bar defaults dot top app bar colors. And there you can say, I want the container to be, for example, and then the title color like this. But this is the only case where I don't want to change the color based on the light theme and the dark theme, because it's off brand. So I'm going to actually revert this to using the color itself. So orange and blue dark. And right now you can see that the code looks a bit not nice because this top bar is making a lot of noise and the screen itself has enough code. So I'm going to export this part, this whole top app bar, to its own file. And that's very easy to do. So you can just select the whole part that you want to extract and click on extract function and then give it a name. I'm going to just give it my app bar, and this opt-in needs to be moved to here. Yeah, it's already moved. And even this one, I'm going to move it to its own class to make it reusable. So I'm going to create a package called components, and there make a new file called my app bar. And then I copy paste this thing there. But then I need to import it. I can't import it because it's private. So let's make it public and then import it. Yeah, it's a bit nicer now. So let's run the app one more time, see how it looks like. Now we're talking. Oh yeah, by the way, I forgot. The my app bar has also the fake store string hard-coded. This, of course, is not the way I want to do it. We want to use the name of the app actually here. The way to access the name of the app is through the resources. If you remember, we talked about having string resources, and they were listed here on the res values strings. This is where the name of the app is. So when you see the icon of the app in your launcher, in your phone, this name will be written under the app. So this is what I want to use instead of this hard-coded text. And the way to access it in Compose is this way. String resource. And we need to give it an ID. So unfortunately, it doesn't work like just doing something like this. These resources have a generated ID, is a number. And the way to access that number is like this. There is a generated class called R, which stands for resources. And you can say r.string. I need to import this one, import the class. And then we say app name. It's a bit complicated, I know, but this is how Android works. So it refers to this string by referring to the number of it. And now, if I run it, you will see this. And of course, I don't want this name. I want it to be called fake store. So this is the proper way to access the name of the app. And also for everything else in the product screen, which is hard-coded, this URL, all these title descriptions, this dollar, everything. This is all temporary, so I wouldn't do this in a real life app. Just keep that in mind. And we will replace these later with the data that comes from the server. So that's it for implementing the product screen layout. We mentioned so many things, but the key takeaway is that themes help us manage color palettes and font styles. And the action items are adding an image to the layout and creating a theme.